So recently, I started playing Twilight Princess for the first time. I enjoyed it for the first few hours, but now I'm a little over 5 hours in, and I think I'm going to put it down. I have played at least some of every 3D Zelda game, except for Majora's Mask, and the same thing has happened for me with nearly every one, the only exception being Breath of the Wild. So why do I love Breath of the Wild while I've given up on every other 3D Zelda game I've played? Well, the aspect I like most about Breath of the Wild is the exploration. I have played Breath of the Wild for over 120 hours so far, and I still have not beaten it. The game encourages curiosity and exploration in pretty much every aspect, and this sense of exploration and personal discovery is a huge factor in why I love the game so much. Another important facet of Breath of the Wild is the combat. While there is room for improvement, the combat in Breath of the Wild is pretty good. You have a variety of different primary weapons to choose from, including one-handed swords, two-handed swords, elemental rods, spears, boomerangs, and much more. All of these play differently and offer many different options. You have to be mindful with your attacks, as if you just mash B, you will probably get hit with an enemy attack. To prevent this, you should hold your guard with your shield. Be careful though, because by taking out two-handed weapons, you automatically put away your shield and leave yourself vulnerable. You can simply block many attacks with your shield, but if you parry or dodge with correct timing, that will give you even more of an advantage in combat, resulting in a flurry rush, where you can deal a lot of damage at once. You can keep your distance using your bow and different arrows such as normal, fire, bomb, ice, spark, and ancient. You can also use your runes such as magnesis, stasis, and bombs in creative ways as well. The abilities you get from the various champions can help too. Will you use Revali's Gale to attack from above or to soar to the enemy's high vantage point? Or maybe you will use Urbosa's Rage to tackle many enemies at once. You can try using stealth as well. Maybe you will sneak up to an enemy camp and steal their weapons, or maybe you will blow up their chandelier to kill many of them at once. There are many other options available to the player that I did not mention, and some that I probably don't even know about. One time, wind was pushing a certain direction, so I lit some grass on fire and watched as the flames slowly traveled to a distant enemy base, where it blew up some barrels they had lying around, damaging every enemy there. Another noteworthy thing is that since there are often many enemies present at once, you have to take that into consideration when deciding how to tackle an encounter. Once again, I'm not saying that Breath of the Wild's combat is perfect. I actually think it has a lot of room for improvement. For example, I think the enemy variety could be a lot better, and I also think that they could have allowed for even more creativity. That being said, Breath of the Wild's combat is fun and engaging. Anyway, the exploration and the combat are two of the most important components that make me really enjoy Breath of the Wild. Now let's talk about the other 3D Zeldas and why I generally don't enjoy them that much. I'm going to be focusing on Twilight Princess especially, since that is the one I've played most recently, but a lot of what I'm going to say applies to the other 3D Zeldas as well. Also, I know I've only played a bit more than 5 hours of the game, and that is a small slice of the game overall. I understand that, and I'm not trying to turn this into a review or a critique of Twilight Princess specifically, or necessarily say that I don't like the entirety of Twilight Princess. I obviously can't say that, since I haven't played the whole thing. However, I think 5 hours is usually enough time to get a sense of what a game is like, and after the amount I've played, I realized I wasn't really enjoying myself. This has happened to me not just with Twilight Princess, but many 3D Zelda games. Let's discuss why. As I mentioned before, my favorite thing about Breath of the Wild is the exploration. Breath of the Wild is an open world game, while most 3D Zeldas are fairly linear, featuring enclosed environments. You even get these little maps on the side of the screen, which are like the least explorational things in the world. As a result of this, exploration is not a huge factor in the fun of these games. There are many parts of the games where you reach a new area, such as when you first get to, say, Castletown in Ocarina of Time. Running around, talking to people, and seeing what you can discover in these new places is fun, definitely, though it's less of exploration and more of taking a tour around this small area that you have to go to. And while it is fun to explore these towns and other areas, I wouldn't call it the main draw of the games. Exploration is more supplementary, but it isn't reason enough to be playing these games. Pretty much any JRPG in the world has to explore towns. Wind Waker is somewhat of an exception here, as I really do like exploring the oceans and finding little secret islands. Even just exploring towns is more fun in Wind Waker than in other 3D Zeldas. And sure enough, while I still gave up on it, Wind Waker is definitely my second favorite 3D Zelda. Now, I'm not saying that exploration is necessary in a good Zelda game. Not at all. In fact, most of my favorite games are linear and do not emphasize exploration that much. They are fun for other reasons. I'm just pointing out that the biggest reason I love Breath of the Wild is not a big factor in most other 3D Zelda games. That's perfectly fine, but it means that there must be other reasons for them to be fun, and for me, those reasons just don't exist. What do you spend your time doing in most 3D Zelda games? Well, you do spend time exploring towns, which I like, but what else? If you're not in a town, you are likely either 1. Moving from place to place, probably fighting enemies along the way, aka experiencing combat, or 2. You are doing a dungeon. I know there are other things you could be doing as well, and there are many things I do like about these games. I love the minigames in 3D Zelda, I really like the story in Twilight Princess so far, and I love the lore of the Zelda games. And of course, the music is fantastic, and there are more things I'm sure that I'm not mentioning. However, combat in dungeons is how you spend most of your time, and unfortunately, I don't find either of these very fun. Let's talk about combat first. Remember how much I like the combat of Breath of the Wild? Well, compared to that, the combat in any other 3D Zelda, say Twilight Princess, is laughable. Here's how it works. Oh look, an enemy popped up. Step 1. Hold ZL. Now you are locked onto that enemy. Step 2. Mash B. That's it. The combat is so simple that fighting enemies is mundane and dull. Every single time an enemy comes onto the screen, you go through that experience again and again. Enemies don't mix things up at all, so the experience is the same every time you fight that enemy. Enemies are often one at a time, but even when they're not, you can usually just focus on one and then move on to the next, and it will be fine. Worst comes to worst, you have to dodge once or twice, such as if an enemy is flying, you might have to dodge its attack and then use your own attacks now that it is on the ground. Or, if another enemy attacks you while you're fighting his friend, you just jump out of the way and continue. It's insane that I've played over 120 hours of Breath of the Wild, and I still enjoy its combat, yet after playing Twilight Princess for 5 hours, I am already bored with it. I have had this problem with every 3D Zelda game I've played, other than Breath of the Wild. So, the combat is boring, and while the exploration is fun, there isn't that much of it. What else is there? Well, what about the dungeons? Dungeons are a well-renowned component of Zelda games, and in the 3D ones particularly, they can be multi-hour affairs. According to the internet, Twilight Princess has 9 of them, in addition to 2 mini-dungeons. Breath of the Wild made the controversial decision to only include 4 dungeons, and they're not traditional dungeons either. They're divine beasts, giant metal animals that you have to scour and manipulate in order to activate a bunch of terminals so that you can gain access to the boss room. Me, on the other hand, I'm glad they only included 4, because let me tell you, I hate them. I did the Zora one first, and enjoyed it in the beginning due to its novelty, but that novelty wore off fast, and overall I did not enjoy the experience. After that was the Rito one. By the time I finished those 2 divine beasts, I was so sick of them. They completely contradict the rest of the game's values and are not fun at all. I was so sick of them, in fact, that I had 2 different friends of mine do the Gerudo one for me. One did the first half, and one did the second half. I took back control to fight the boss. And I haven't even done the Goron one yet. Since I don't expect to enjoy it, I've been putting it off, which is the main reason I haven't beaten the game yet. However, we're here to talk about traditional 3D Zeldas, so let's talk about those. Suffice to say, generally speaking, I don't like the dungeons in those either. At the start, you enter into a labyrinth of many rooms and usually multiple floors. Your goal is to reach the boss room. The experience usually goes something like this. Do this task so you can open this door, and then do this task so you can open this door, but this next door is locked, so you've got to do 5 more tasks and open 4 more doors in order to find the key to that door from before. Now go back and open it and you'll find this chest, and inside the chest will be a new item. Getting a new item is admittedly cool. Now, complete some other tasks that you couldn't before, but now you can, since you have this new item, and open a few more doors, and congratulations, you cleared the dungeon. Not to mention, you might get stuck, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but that usually happens at least a couple times per dungeon. So now you've got to stop playing and look up what to do next. Usually, they aren't cool puzzles that I couldn't figure out. Instead, it is usually that I hadn't done this specific thing, which I have to do in order to gain access to this thing in order to get that key from earlier. It doesn't feel like the game outwitted me. Instead, it feels like I had no way of knowing what I was supposed to do next or where I was supposed to go next. I didn't fail a puzzle, I simply didn't realize that that thing was there. This is the result of the aimlessness of the dungeons. There's no apparent direction or way that you need to go next. Just figure it out. This can be a fun tool when you know the task or the goal, but since I don't even know that, I just get frustrated. Of course, along the way you'll be fighting a bunch of enemies too, and you already know how I feel about that. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, that I'm just an idiot, and that the dungeons are designed in a fair way for you to figure out the solution, and that you can usually complete the dungeons without getting stuck or missing something. Let's say that I'm able to complete the dungeons without getting stuck. Unfortunately, this would still not make the dungeons fun in my opinion, generally speaking. Even if I'm always able to figure out what to do next, that doesn't make what I'm doing fun. Dungeons are still hour-long gauntlets of tasks that in and of themselves are not fun. Wait for the wind to blow, run across the bridge, open the door, open the chest, get the key, run back through the door, across the bridge, and through another door. It doesn't help, by the way, that doors take multiple seconds to open. Now jump across the platform, kind of fun, I guess. Unlock that door, go through it, run down these stairs to that monkey who is locked up, roll into the monkey's prison 3 times to free him. Now mash B to kill those enemies that appeared. Swing across the broken bridge using the monkeys, go through some more doors, kill some more enemies, and swing across some more bridges till you reach this other door, but oh no, there's a spider web blocking it, so take out your lantern to burn it. Now go through the door, fight some enemies, and throw a bomb at this one enemy to kill him and grant you entry to the next door. I'm not making any of this up, I'm describing in sequential order some of the events of the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess. None of what I just described was fun, at least not for me. I didn't really enjoy any of it. None of it feels like gameplay, it's just doing these meaningless tasks that the game is making me complete in order to move on, then keep completing them. That's the game. Maybe the dungeons get better later on in the games, since I haven't finished any of these games, but I've still played plenty, and from what I've played, this is often what it's like. Maybe you could argue that the tasks wouldn't be fun on their own, but the satisfaction when you figure out what to do is why it's fun. Like, writing down numbers isn't really fun, but completing a Sudoku puzzle can be. However, it's not like the game is providing me with puzzles that I have to figure out how to solve. To that, I would point to Breath of the Wild shrines, which are mostly pretty good. Most of the time, it goes like this. Here is this puzzle. This is your task. Figure out how to achieve this task. In Breath of the Wild, this is especially well done because there are often multiple ways to find a solution, which is great, but this method can still be successful if there's only one solution. Shrines are successful because it is fun to figure out what to do in order to achieve your goal. On a side note, it is also good that you can leave and come back later if you can't figure it out, though I understand why this might not work in a dungeon setting. In Twilight Princess's Forest Temple, in addition to most other 3D dungeons that I've played, once you know the task, you usually know how to do it. There is no fun in figuring out the solution, you simply have to endure the boringness of doing the thing that the game wants you to do until you can move on to the next one and do it again. Oh, there's a Deku-like blocking the way? Better throw a bomb in its mouth. There's a spider web on the wall? Better use my lantern to burn it. There's a bridge facing the wrong way? Better throw my Gale Boomerang at it to turn it the correct way. It's not solving anything, or using creativity, or wit, or anything like that. You're not figuring anything out, you're just doing what the game tells you to do. Ultimately, dungeons become gauntlets of boring tasks that the game throws at you, one after another, until you reach the end. I will say though, that you are usually rewarded for your efforts, because Zelda dungeons typically end in a boss fight, and 3D Zelda boss fights are generally very good. I also would like to mention that this design format isn't exclusive to dungeons. Even at many sections of the overworld, you are treated with these sorts of task gauntlets, just at a lesser scale. I think I've pretty much made all the points I have to make about the 3D Zelda games other than Breath of the Wild, so let's recapitulate. I'm not trying to say there isn't fun to be had in 3D Zelda games. 3D Zelda games do a great job at capturing the spirit of adventure. There's fun to be had with exploring and with the stories as well. Getting new items is always exciting too, and the boss fights are great. There are other good things that I'm not mentioning as well. But after the first chunk of these games, I always stop playing, because I think that overall, the gameplay is just not very fun. For the most part, combat is incredibly dull and uninteresting. In an action-adventure game involving saving the world and killing bad guys with your sword, this is an important aspect, and it just doesn't deliver for me. And as for the overall design of the games, especially in dungeons, but even in the overworld, the game design consists of a series of tedious, uninteresting tasks. For the most part, they are not puzzles, which should be fun to solve. They are just tasks. Once you identify the task, you know what to do. The difficulty comes in figuring out what the heck the task is, which I find frustrating. As I continued to play Twilight Princess, as has happened with most other 3D Zeldas, I realized I was simply not having fun, and I asked myself where the fun was supposed to be coming from in the first place. I realized that I was having a mediocre experience, and I didn't want to stick with it when there's so many great games out there that I could be playing instead. Thank you so much for watching and for sticking around, even though it's somewhat of a controversial opinion. I know the 3D Zeldas are very beloved games, so if you disagree with me, please let me know why. Let me know why you love these games, and why you disagree with my points. I'm really curious. If you agree with me, please let me know too. I hope I'm not the only one. My name is Youngster Skmore. I make all sorts of video game videos, especially about Nintendo. So if you want to see more, please subscribe to stick around. Also, if anyone wanted to share this, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.